I'm Michael Bain, and welcome to Triggered, coming to you as always from the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains in Dragon House Studios, and brought to you this week by Armscor, Rock Island. This weekend I was at the Whittington Center at the Lucid Optics Ballistic Summit, where once a year, Jason Wilson, head of Lucid Optics, brings together an interesting and eclectic group of people, different companies, different journalists, basically to see product that you've never seen before. I've been privileged to go for the last few years, and I was looking forward to what amazing things we might find. First up, APF Armory. They make AR-15s, and you're thinking like, wow, so do another 10 million billion companies in the United States. I heard the name, I wasn't familiar with the guns, but when I started handling their extensive line of AR-15, AR-10 platform guns, I thought, wow, where have these people been hiding? One that really caught my eye, partly because it's in a great color, it's also in 300 Win Mag. And I think those of you who've shot 300 Win Mag out of semi-auto platforms know it can be a beast. But the APF was anything but. Top right edge turns out to work.
Hit the center there. Yep. I don't even need a spot for him. He's on.
That's just too darn easy. It is not recoiling horribly. It is not pounding you. It's a 300 Win Mag, you know? What's that Coyote? Is that about
Coyote's 500, I believe.
500?
Yep. You want to go for that?
Yeah.
All right. I'm on it.
It sounds okay, so because you chose for
Sit. Woo, moved it around.
Yeah. You know, I should quit while I'm ahead.
No, you can't.
Jason Gilliland, law enforcement out of Alaska, had an interesting thought one day. What if you need an additional tourniquet as a law enforcement officer? Or what if you, as a homeowner, something goes bump in the night, you pick up your rifle, but do you pick up a medical kit with a tourniquet? Because if you pick up a rifle when something goes bump in the middle of the night, you may very well need that tourniquet. So he designed a rifle-mounted, a weapons-mounted tourniquet. It's not your primary tourniquet, it's not your primary first aid kit, but the idea is if what you do is quickly grab your rifle, then there's a tourniquet attached to it. He found out, by the way, that lots of other people were interested in a tourniquet they could place. For example, if you have an ATV, you're a hunter and you're out in the woods, you think you might need a tourniquet at some point that was mounted on your ATV. Or if you're a private pilot that was mounted in your plane where you could always reach it. It is a really interesting idea. Another idea whose time has come is hunting with air guns. And Air Force, I could say this, I guess, Air Force air guns was out in force in Whittington with Ton Jones. Ton Jones is one of the 3 or 4 coolest guys in the world. If you ever need somebody to wrangle poisonous snakes or help you control a really irritated elephant, Ton Jones is your man. He's also the director of research and destruction for Air Force.
I'm Ton Jones. I'm the Director of R&D and Marketing for Air Force Air Guns and Rapid Air Works. I build big guns and make things go boom.
Talk about how air guns have changed. I mean, it used to be a kid's toy. Now it is a really serious tool.
Air guns are no longer the Red Ryder of the world. We actually produce air rifles that shoot 850 foot-pounds of muzzle energy plus. There's not a hoofed animal on this earth that we cannot take with an air gun now. The gun I'm shooting is a Texan 457, shooting a 350 grain projectile. The gun is capable of 750 foot-pounds plus of muzzle energy but I found for the long range and target and hunting, I stick to the 350 grain bowtail hollow point. The reason I'm smiling so much when hitting that steel is because I am looking at the same half-inch at 100 yards. I made a Mickey Mouse head on that steel with my Texan just now without refilling it.
We'll have lots more clips from the Ballistic Summit over the next few weeks, but when we come back, something really exceptional, a little instruction from the great Jim Gilliland. Welcome back to Triggered. Jim Gilliland is a legend in Special Forces sniping community, former U.S. Army Ranger. His exploits are the stuff that major movies are made from. But he's also a top competitor in the Precision Rifle Series, PRS, and a world-class instructor on long-distance shooting. Now, I have to apologize a little for the wind, but you're going to want to hear what Jim has to say.
Is I'll come up and just let the rifle drop down on the bag. And as you can see, I mean, it's horribly unstable as it is right there, right? I mean, that's trying to fall over by itself, right? So, but what we've done right there is we have stabilized the rifle on the barricade as it is. So that is as stable as it's going to be unless it's laying on the ground at this point. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to stabilize ourselves behind the rifle. And the way we do that is we're going to come up, we're going to get a good wide stance so that our left and right movement is stopped because our legs are directly under us. And you'll see as we go down, you'll bend your legs further and further apart, ensuring that your toes are pointed in so that your heels are locking your legs into place and you're not sliding out with your toes. All right, he's just come up to the rifle. So if he actually lets go and just steps back, you can see the rifle stays stable as it is. So he's just going to marry himself to the back of the rifle. And if you notice, if he was in the prone, it's the same position. The rifle goes right inside his shoulder and it's tucked in slightly closer to center line than being outside. That's going to put that recoil on straight to his back of his pocket. He's got his front hand coming up and he's married himself to the bag and the rifle. So he's got his hand on the bag that's on the barricade, and then he's just touching the rifle. And whether you do over the front of the bag or you can also do over the top, but you're still going to touch that bag, rifle, and scope. So everything is married together. And this is going to give you the stability on the gun without really affecting the wobble of the gun itself. It's going to be stable the way it stands, right? So this is the way you're going to build a standing barricade position. Again, if you put his bipod down and lay down, it would be the exact same body position, with the only difference is I'm marrying myself to the rifle and the barricade as opposed to putting it on the back of the gun. Because all of these are, all the stages in a match is timed, then economy of motion comes into play too. That's why we started high, because gravity goes down. You don't want to build up into position, you want to fall down into it. And so when we transition to the next position, he's going to take a shot, roll his bolt open, and his bag and his gun comes down together. It's just these are locked back, and our heels are pressed out. And what that does when you put your feet apart and lock your knees out is that gives you bone structure to hold into, right? I can stand, even though it may be weird, I can stand like this way longer than I can stand like this, because eventually, because you're using all of your legs, your muscles in your legs, you're going to start doing the sewing machine, you're going to start bouncing, right? Right. It's a finesse thing, right? The more input you put into precision rifle, the more output you're going to get out of the gun, right? If you're holding it too hard, pulling into it real hard, and really getting into it, putting pressure on it, then all of that pressure has to be released under recoil, and it has to go somewhere. So the more you allow the rifle to move the way the rifle wants to move, then the more independent it will react, and just it will move in, like I said, straight lines, and all you're doing is stopping recoil as opposed to preventing recoil from happening.
We'll have links for you to find Jim where you can get his training. And by the way, he is also now working with Shaw barrels. And in an upcoming episode, we're going to go extensively into Shaw's new, incredibly inexpensive custom guns. Stay with us. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Arms Corps, Rock Island Armory. What's your passion? Taurus USA. Always ready, always bring it. Stoger, everyday tough. SDS Imports and the Thesis PX9. Thesis means quality. Hunter's HD Gold. They change so you don't have to. This is our Your Best Defense segment. Interestingly enough, early next year, I'm going to be in California teaching a class on non-permissive environments, carrying a weapon in a non-permissive environment. The way this came up, there was an article that was written about me years and years ago talking about my trips into Central America, my trips into various dangerous places. And the article started out with, Michael Bain is bulletproof. Nobody is bulletproof. But as we move toward more and more non-permissive environments, places where flashing a gun, maybe flashing a knife, would be dangerous. Quick example, New York City. If a New York City cop sees your knife clipped in your pants pockets, you're going to jail. When we think about non-permissive environments, the first thing we need to do is make sure that onlookers' eyes roll over us. We don't want there to be anything about us that causes someone's eyes to stop. Now, you've heard a lot about gray men, things like that, and then the people who talk about being gray men, being invisible, are decked out fully in 511 contractor light, I believe you might call it. The key thing I found traveling in foreign countries is I wanted to pretty much look like everybody else. Not slavishly, not like I'm dressed in a costume that's good in Honduras or is good in Italy or is good in Germany. But I want to have a sense of what people are wearing and what people's eyes just pass over. One of the things you're going to find in a non-permissive environment is the pocket gun is going to be your friend. But with a gun that you carry in your pocket, there's a lot of things that you have to consider, which my class is going to be going into, by the way. It also changes the way you're going to have to practice because you're not shooting a powerful caliber. You're shooting what we have always considered a subcaliber, less than 9mm. In my case, one of my classic non-permissive environments gun is a Ruger LCP-2 in .22 long rifle shooting Federal Punch ammunition. Just saying that tells me that I'm going to have to be very specific in my training. I'm going to be shooting smaller groups, assuming I'm going to be shooting closer, and I'm going to be pulling the trigger as many times as is necessary to make the aggressor stop. The way the world is moving now, it's a good time for you to start thinking about non-permissive environments and how you need to change your carry habits if you're in one of those environments. Okay, I'm Michael Bain. This is Triggered. You can always find us on michaelbain.tv, where it's always free. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Rumble. Thanks to Arms Corps Rock Island for sponsoring us this week. See you next week.